let's jump right in. You know, it's a really hard truth, but most screenplays are not rejected because the core idea is bad. I mean, we always picture Hollywood as this place desperately hunting for the next big, wild idea, right? But the reality? It's actually way more mechanical than that. In this explainer, we're going to break down the actual anatomy of a rejected screenplay. We'll figure out exactly why industry readers just stop caring, and more importantly, how professional writers craft their stories to completely avoid these fatal mistakes. Just look at this. Out of the thousands upon thousands of scripts submitted every single year to producers, competitions, studios, you name it, that rejected pile is absolutely massive. Only this tiny, tiny little sliver ever gets serious consideration. But honestly, here's the truly fascinating part. The vast majority of those rejected scripts, they are failing for the exact same completely predictable reasons. It is almost never a lack of imagination. It's a failure of execution.
So, 10. 10 is the magic number here. Industry readers, the literal gatekeepers of the entire business, they are completely drowning in scripts. We're talking dozens every single week. And because of that crushing workload, they've developed a brutally strict filter. They will literally stop caring before they even reach page 10 if you don't hook them. You've got 10 pages, just 10 pages to prove you actually know what you're doing.
I actually like to call this the reader's gauntlet. Because your first 10 pages, they aren't some leisurely introduction to your story. No, they are an audition. And let me tell you, the judge is incredibly impatient. If your script commits any of these rookie mistakes, like if nothing interesting happens right out of the gate, if the dialogue feels super generic, or if the reader just can't figure out who they're even supposed to care about, that reader is checking out. They might keep physically turning the pages, sure, but mentally, yeah, your script is already in the trash.
So how do you actually survive this gauntlet? Well, the best scripts hit 3 very specific marks super early on. First up, introduce a really compelling character right away. Second, efficiently establish the rules and the overall tone of your world. And third, you've got to create an intriguing question almost immediately. Basically, you have to give that reader a definitive, absolute, undeniable reason to turn the page. Master these 3 things, and honestly, you're already ahead of like 90% of the competition.
Now, here is a fundamental rule of storytelling you absolutely need to remember. Character always beats concept. Seriously, a totally mind-bending sci-fi world simply cannot save a boring protagonist. If you want to keep the viewer hooked, you must show characters whose actual actions and unique perspectives explain the concept for you. That's what makes it interesting. A simple premise absolutely soars when it's anchored by a fascinating character with a desperate want and a glaring flaw. The characters are literally the anchor that makes the whole concept interesting and keeps the audience glued to the screen.
Just think about your favorite movies for a second. Why do you actually love them? I bet you remember the people way more often than you remember all the intricate, tiny mechanics of the plot, right? Great protagonists share 4 absolute, non-negotiable traits. 1, they want something desperately. 2, they have deep, really relatable flaws. 3, they make terrible mistakes. And 4, because of those messy mistakes, they undergo a profound emotional change. Without that specific journey, the reader just loses interest, no matter how cool your premise might be.
Okay, let's talk about exposition, because it is the death of so many screenplays. New writers have this terrible habit of over-describing every little thing: locations, emotions, complex backstories. So instead of writing, John is extremely lonely, in the action lines, which is basically just lecturing us, professional scripts are surprisingly lean. They show it. They'll write, John eats dinner alone in silence. By showing these interesting actions, the character naturally explains the concept of their loneliness to the audience. It keeps the viewer actively engaged rather than just spoon-feeding them the information. And that brings us perfectly to this golden rule. Film is a visual medium. Show, don't lecture. Instead of explicitly explaining the world's complex rules or just handing the reader a character's internal feelings on a silver platter, you have to let the audience put the puzzle pieces together naturally through visual action. The audience actually wants to participate. They want to watch what the characters do, not sit there and read an essay about how they feel. All right, so that brings us to the ultimate engine of literally every single screenplay out there: conflict. It is the essential friction that keeps your scenes from feeling flat. Without it, your story just dies right there on the page. And look, this applies across the board. I don't care if you're writing a laugh-out-loud comedy, a sweeping romance, a heavy drama, or a huge high-octane action movie, conflict is the absolute key to keeping audiences invested from beginning to end. So how do we create that friction? Well, every single scene you write must answer 2 very exact questions. First,
what does this character want in this exact moment? And second, what is stopping them from getting it? Think about it. If your character just walks into a room, asks for something, and boom, they get it, you have zero tension. And let me tell you, zero tension means zero engagement.
This actually creates a really powerful three-step loop. Want, obstacle, tension. First, the character wants something. Next, an obstacle blocks them. Maybe it's another character, a physical barrier, or even just an internal fear. And finally, because of that obstacle, tension and suspense naturally start to build. You absolutely must maintain this loop, because no tension means no suspense. No suspense means readers start skimming, and the second they start skimming, yeah, you've lost them.
So to bring this all together, scripts don't land in that massive rejection pile because of a lack of imagination. They fail because they flat out ignore the fundamentals. They go in with a weak opening that totally fails that page 10 test. They rely on forgettable characters who just cannot carry the concept. They completely bog the reader down with way too much exposition and lecturing. And ultimately, they just fail to provide enough conflict to sustain any real tension.
But hey, here is the really good news. These are not magical talents that you're just arbitrarily born with or without. These are mechanical skills. Every single great screenwriter you admire started by writing terrible first drafts that were so far from perfect. The only difference? They kept learning, they kept rewriting, and they sharpened their craft. By just recognizing these common pitfalls, you can actively fix them in your own writing, exactly like the pros do.
So before you hit send on your next screenplay to a producer or a big competition, I want you to do something that's honestly a little difficult. I want you to step into the shoes of that super busy, overworked industry reader. Look completely objectively at your own work. Read your first 10 pages and ask yourself this one brutally honest question. If this weren't my script, would I honestly keep reading after page 10?